Mr. President, it's Thursday, and it's a time that I get to come to the Senate floor and recognize an Alaskan who has made a difference in my state, and in this case, someone who's made a difference literally around the globe. And this is someone I refer to as the Alaskan of the Week. And I love to do it. I know some of our reporters listening enjoy this. Kristen, I know you love bears, so this week you'll be particularly interested. But before I get into the bears and the story and the individual we're going to honor today, let me tell you a little bit about what's happening in Alaska. Like other places in our great nation, our state is certainly facing challenges. Like the rest of America, 1 foot in our economic recovery, 1 foot still in this pandemic. And it's a challenging time, but Alaskans are tough. Certainly some of the toughest people in America. And as I say, tough times don't last, but tough people do. And we will get through this as a state, as a nation, and I think that certainly applies to Alaska. But it's summer, the sun is high, the salmon are running thick, the bears are digging them out of the streams, and by the way, a word to the wise, when you have salmon, you almost always have bears, so be careful. In Alaska, we love our bears, and so does our Alaskan of the Week, Julia Devins, who recently moved from Anchorage to the gorgeous town of Homer, Alaska. For those who have been there, you know what I'm talking about. For those who haven't, you got to get out to Homer, the halibut capital of the world, but just a magnificently beautiful place. Just the drive from Anchorage to Homer, breathtaking. There's no other place in the world like it. And it's from Homer now that Julia keeps going, the now world-renowned foundation, the International Bear Conservation Fund, which is part of the International Association of Bear Research and Management, or the IBA, that she and her late husband, wildlife biologist John Devins, founded. So why the foundation? Why the bears? Mr. President, let me tell you about a tragic and beautiful story relating to Julia and her late husband, John. Julia was born in New Mexico and raised in Australia. She has a degree in veterinarian science from the University of Queensland in Australia. She came to Alaska in 1984 to get a PhD in wildlife biology at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. Her focus was on reindeer herd health and disease control. She met John in 1985, and the two were married in Fairbanks in July 1990. They were both in love with Alaska and with each other. It was the love of a lifetime, Julia said. Indeed, it was a great match. She was a veterinarian focusing on reindeer. He was a wildlife biologist for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service working on polar bear research. The best wildlife biologist job you could ever have. Polar bear research in Alaska. Then, Mr. President, unfortunately, tragedy struck. 3 months after they were married, on October 11th, John and his colleague George Menkins and their pilot Clifford Minch got into a twin-engine Aerial Commander at Dead Horse. They were headed north to do a low-altitude aerial survey of female polar bears with cubs who prowl the ice hunting for food. They were believed to have traveled as far as 250 miles northwest of Barrow, now known as Utiavik, the northernmost point in North America. That's where people believe that the plane they were traveling on vanished. No one really knows where. The search, at least extensively, was extensive in the first few days. Members of the U.S. Coast Guard flew C-130s, as well as civilians in their aircraft spanned the area, flying hundreds of thousands of square miles looking for any signs of the aircraft. After a week, they decided that the search was over. Julia was desperate. She knew that her late husband and the two others had 2 weeks of provisions and adequate survival gear. What if they had survived? What if they were on an ice floe? What if they were still out there and the searchers just happened to miss them in that huge expanse? This idea was overwhelming to her. So she called everyone she knew to help in keeping the search going. And eventually, like so many Alaskans did, she called the late, great Senator Ted Stevens, who, as he was known to do, got to work for his fellow Alaskans. He did an amazing thing, Julia said. Quote, he arranged for the Canadians to send a military radar plane that could detect metal above sea ice, anything bigger than a 4-foot square. The plane could cover an area the size of Manitoba in one night. So they did it. And it was that search that finally gave Julia peace of mind. She said, quote, after the military plane came and left, I felt like we had done everything we could have possibly done to find my husband. I knew that my husband was gone. And there was a peace of mind going forward. Senator Ted Stevens gave me a life, she said. He gave me a life free from self-recrimination and free of doubt. She also credits Senator Stevens for giving her enough peace to work to honor her husband's memory in a way that was unique to him. She took the proceeds that she received from the insurance and she began the Bear Foundation. It started off small in 1993. The first year it was up and running, the foundation gave away $5,000 in grant money. Then money, which was invested well, began to grow, and so did the amount of the grants awarded. One year, the foundation was able to give out $50,000 in grant money. The average size of individual grants is now $8,000. All told, they're able to give about $100,000 a year, including donations that they get from individuals and organizations. But, Mr. President, it's not just about the money that has grown. So has the prestige of this foundation. The IBA now has 550 members from over 60 countries. Because of Julia Devins in Homer, Alaska, all across the globe, researchers are working with other biologists. They're tracking bears. They're assisting in management of these great animals. They're writing papers and sharing information. They're doing what they love for the ecosystem. Julia said, quote, when people love bears, they love them with their whole heart and soul. It's a very profound thing. Julia talked about how the IBA funded a researcher to search for a rumored small brown bear, the gobi bear, in Mongolia, the only bear to exist in this extreme desert habitat. There had been sightings throughout the year, but no scientist had actually ever been able to prove its existence. The IBA funded a scientist, Harry Reynolds, an Alaskan from Fairbanks, to travel to Mongolia and find the gobi bear, and he found him. Now the Mongolian government is committed to its protection. Scientists funded by the IBA have worked with other scientists in Iran to document not only bears, but they're able to find 16 new wildlife species. And from the dangerous border between India and Pakistan to the equally dangerous forests of Colombia, bear researchers, helped with IBA money, are working with local citizens and governments and other scientists, forming true alliances to help save bears. Science ties the world together, Julia said. When you have a collective of like-minded people working for a common goal, all things are possible. And Mr. President, when you have someone with a mission like Julia Devins, all things are possible too. So thank you to Julia for your commitment to this great cause, for your work in helping keep John's memory alive, and for your amazing work on bears in Alaska and bears in the world. And congratulations on being our Alaskan of the Week. I yield the floor.